Hello there, and welcome to a different kind of video. I do these every now and again for games that I really quite like. There's been a big update to Remnant from the Ashes today, and I thought I'd take a look through the different patch notes. So here we go. First of all, we've got some quality of life stuff. One of the big things that people have been asking for, and a big issue for hopefully me at some point in the future, is the concept of co-op scaling. It used to be that if you were max ranked in terms of traits, say you got all like plus 20 gear, and you joined a friend who was just starting the game, it would scale the game to the max level guy, and that would mean that your level 1 friend would get one shot, they'd be able to do no damage, and so on and so forth. And that, quite frankly, was not great design. So they've changed it. Co-op scaling now caps at plus 3 levels of the host. So if my mate starts and he's got all the basic equipment, I'm going to be capped at plus 4. And that's great, because it means that I don't need to re-roll a character to play with him. I can just take my current character with 375 trait ranks, which is still OP, don't get me wrong, and I can join him and not massively unbalance the game, so that's good. Second bullet point rather, VoIP toggle is in. If you go into the audio tab, I'm assuming it's the same on console as well, you can toggle on and off voice over internet protocol, VoIP. I'm toggling these off because, quite frankly, if I'm playing co-op with my mates, we use an external voice chat program. But now, if you don't have one and you're just playing with randoms rather than people that you are friends with, you can use VoIP whenever you want, which is a great change. Plus, there's a toggle. You need to bind a key for it. Key bindings are in control down here. I'm assuming it's going to be, yeah, push to talk. Bind it to whatever you want. There have been some adjustments made to help fill the matchmaking sessions. So if you're having problems with that, there's also an FOV modifier, which I haven't actually tried. So let's... It's still not an actual slider. It looks like a slider, but it's not. Whoa! So if you want to go for the real over the shoulder, can barely see anything. Yeah, this gives you a much kind of closer feel. That for me is horrible. That's horribly unsettling. So that's field of view down at 0. It'd be nice if you could drag this slider, or just hold the button down. Instead, I'm having to click the mouse multiple times for this. Don't know whether I'll be able to set it back to... Oh, I've got R to reset to default. Let's push this all the way up to max. Oh, and that for me... If you've got a curved monitor or an ultra wide screen or something like that, that's probably great. For me, again, that's horrible. It's not too bad when zoomed in, but no. So that is the field of view option. Now I don't want to reset all the video options. I just want to reset the field of view slider. So yeah, those are the some of the quality of life updates specifically for everybody. There's also been, there we go, that's back to, I think that's back to normal. PS4 controllers were having issue with the dead zone for aiming, so they've had some fixes applied to that whilst they're working on additional co-op adjustments. Oh no, that developer comment is for quality of life as a whole. So they've changed it so that if a lower level player hosts the game will never be more than 3 levels above them, even if their teammates are much higher. Adjustments for quality of life, can now access VoIP, Find the push to talk button and disable it completely. And the PS4 analog stick was causing some issues. Okay, second section is bug fixes. Performance increases across courses, quite useful. The swamp was probably the trickiest area in terms of performance for some reason for a lot of people. Memory stability has been improved across extended play sessions, so if you play for longer periods of time, the game is going to be more stable. I'm assuming a lot of that is for console players, because I haven't heard as much about crashes for the PC. Various traits have been fixed: revivalist, exploiter, scavenger, sleight of hand, suspicion, will to live. These weren't unlocking for some people, even though they were fairly certain they should have done. Those have now been fixed. Ace, the NPC who sells you stuff, apparently she kept disappearing on some people's games. She's never disappeared for me, touch wood. But for a lot of people, she was disappearing. And obviously, if you can't see her, then you can't buy any of the stuff from her. And she is a valuable she's a valuable vendor for resources. There was a bug that allowed anybody that joined the host of a co-op game to actually re-roll that host campaign. That's been fixed. The Lost Gantry event broke on a regular. In fact, one of the streamers that I watch, in his first playthrough, he got up to the Lost Gantry event, played it, and it bugged out. He then decided to re-roll, to completely restart the game from scratch, rather than, because he was dealing with other bugs as well. But that was the straw that broke the back there. Fixed an issue with certain bosses respawning post-quest complete. I think I had that with the Totem Father. Because we killed... Well, he bugged out and died, but we ended up killing him. Quest completed there, and yet he came back when we respawned. Issue fixed with clients loading into the final boss room and being stuck at World Shard. Not entirely sure what that one's about. Fixed FOV on archetype screen for ultra-wide monitors and resolutions. So when you're starting your character for the very first time, there was a resolution issue on that choose your archetype screen. Added FOV lock when changing resolutions to maintain proper proportions and alignments. So if you get yourself a new monitor and you want to try out your new ultra wide or whatever, but you don't want to change anything with your layout, that now locks in place. Fixed user settings not saving when exiting out of the main menu or application too fast. I fell afoul of that bug once. It wasn't a big issue, but it was an issue for some people. Added support to unlock certain achievements that should have been attained. I've just actually had the Dragon Hearts one unlock. You can see that I've got 39 out of 40. Which one am I missing? I've got a hidden achievement missing. Let's take a look at the global stats. What am I? Am I just been blind? Or is it just not showing on here? Dark Awakening is the one that I don't have, I think. I don't know what that is for. Dark Awakening. No, Dark Awakening is apparently the one that I don't have. Don't know what that's about. Right, what else have we got on here? Corrected values being shown for scrap-based achievements and trophies. Yeah, I mean, the trophy system, the achievement system, has been a bit of a mess, to be fair. Fixed bug with Undying King Death Warmed Over achievement. Many general collision fixes and updates. And added backup profile when joining game as a client. So, if you are worried about your save being corrupted by a cheater, if you join somebody in co-op and they are, they're hacking the game with cheat engine or whatever, you've got your backup profile there, so you know that's not going to be an issue. General balance. There are quite a few different things in the balance category, so let's go over those quickly. First of all, the Radiant Tomb. Total spawns and intensity reduced. This was the most notoriously difficult encounter in the game, according to the devs. Radiant Tomb has been retuned to be fairer to the players and reduce the need for a very specific loadout. I don't remember which Radiant Tomb was. So that's good. But apparently it was very difficult. Right, there's a lot of weapon balancing going on. A lot of weapon balancing, starting actually with my favourite, well, I won't say my favourite handgun, but the one that I've used for the majority of the game, because as you can see, I've not exactly leveled up the others. The repeater pistol. Its max spread has been reduced. It's got reduced spread per shot, and it's got increased decay speed. Oops, and I've just switched it off because I'm a muppet. Oh, that's the beam rifle. So it snaps back to the center reticle-wise faster and easier. So that's the repeater pistol that's been changed. The hunting pistol has had some changes. It's now got more ammo in reserve. So it's now got 17 instead of, I'm assuming, 15 from before. It's had its initial spread reduced. It's had the decay speed for its crosshair increased. When you are moving, the penalty that you get for accuracy has been reduced, which, because it's a one-shot weapon, is good. It also reloads 10% faster, which again means it's a nicer weapon to be using in hectic situations. It's very powerful, according to the devs, but it suffered from a smaller ammo reserve, so total less damage before you ran out of ammo, and had an abnormally high moving penalty for being a single-shot weapon, which is already somewhat of a penalty. It's now much more accurate, both stationary and moving, and reloads faster between shots. So again, a buff to that. Next up is the hunting rifle. So that's had a reduced spread for moving, so adding accuracy. The increased initial aim delay speed and post-shot decay speed. So the speed at which the crosshair snaps back to center has been increased in both regards, and it's actually got reduced spread per shot, so it's just in general more accurate, especially at longer ranges, which should help. Because I did have a few occasions where I was aiming for a headshot with it throughout my first playthrough, and I thought it should have hit a headshot and it didn't. It just spread off to the side. Right, the coach gun is next up. I started off with the coach gun, but I didn't play a huge amount with it. So the ideal range is now longer, so you can use it at further distances, which is nice. And it's also got more ammo in reserve. It's got an extra 4 shells to its maximum capacity. So this helps further separate the coach gun from the shotgun, making it slightly, making its ideal range slightly longer. It's got tighter focus, reduced drop-off, and incredible burst. And it's got slightly more ammo now as well. Because it is a long gun. It's not actually a shotgun. It feels like one. Feels like a dual action shotgun, but it's actually a longer gun. Next up, one of the guns that I really haven't used very much. Because by the time I found it, all my other stuff was way higher. The assault rifle. So what have they done to the assault rifle? Well, they've added more ammunition into its magazine, into its reserves for a start. Plus 4 bullets in its reserved. Its initial spread isn't as wide. And the curve for auto fire also isn't as wide. And the decay speed, it now snaps back again to the center a lot easier. The assault rifle, while highly damaging, has always suffered from too much weapon spread too quickly. They've lessened the spread curve and the maximum amount of spread to bring it closer to their vision of an assault rifle. And again, it's gained more ammo in a clip, which is very, very useful indeed. Let's refresh our ammo. So that's all good. Right, next up is the crossbow. Now, I tried out the crossbow back when I got it, and it had the projectile thing. It does not anymore. It's now got just a generic... That was a terrible shot. It's got a generic targeting reticule. So they've changed the reticle behavior, they've changed the reticle graphic. The crossbow suffered from using the projectile reticle, so we changed it to use the normal static one. They've still got some adjustments planned for that. And they've done the same thing with the Devastator as well. So it doesn't use the projectile one anymore. It's got its own multi-shots reticule, which I think is quite good. The Either Storm rifle, which I picked up and quite liked, has got a lot of similar changes to the hunting rifle. It's got its initial delay is reduced, so it becomes more accurate faster. Its initial spread is slightly slimmer. Its spread per shot is also slimmer, so it's going to be more accurate at range like a hunting rifle should. And it's got extra ammo per clip for a total of +3 overall. So because it's basically a hunting rifle but with lightning, it's received the same updates as that, basically. Okay, next up is the one that a lot of people seem to be not super happy with on the old social medias. Surprise, surprise, the beam rifle. Beam rifle's a really cool weapon, but it was massively powerful. So what have they done? Well, firstly, they've reduced the damage. They've reduced the damage ramp up. So the initial damage has gone from 16 to 14. So it starts off doing slightly lower damage when it first hits, and then it ramps up and does more and more and more damage, and it actually ramps up to the same value. They've also reduced the reload speed, so it now takes longer to reload, 20% longer to reload in fact, so it makes it slower, and they've decreased its damage slightly. So it's a nerf. It's an all-round nerf to the beam rifle. Developer comments. Widely considered the most powerful weapon in the game, they wanted to bring the beam rifle closer to the other long guns. The initial damage was reduced by 2, requiring slightly longer DPS to reach maximum potential. They also significantly increased the time it takes to reload, so that maintaining the beam for as long as possible is the best way to maximize its potential. Well, it still does slightly more total DPS than the assault rifle. The assault rifle always deals a constant, reliable amount of damage, whereas the beam requires a longer commitment, but it has that higher top end. What else do we have? That's the wrong one. The Hive Cannon. Little pistol. I barely touched this since we got it, which is a shame because I quite like the look of it. So the hive cannon, as it's called, has 2 hive grenades per clip for a total of 5 shots total. Because it only had 3 before, so you can now fire 5, which is great. They've reduced its reload speed by 10%, so it actually reloads faster after you've expended your magazine, which is good. The mod I can't show you because I'm not in combat. It's mod damage over time. I can show you this. So it fires a hive projectile that deals 24 damage on impact and releases a cloud of deadly insects. Those deadly insects deal damage over time. They've buffed that from the 80 that it was doing before to 150. So they've almost doubled the amount of damage over time that the mod is doing, which I think will be really good. I'm actually thinking about doing a kind of swarmy style bug themed build with this and Swarm. Although they've changed Swarm, more on that in a bit. The mod power requirement has increased from 350 to 600, and the actual number of charges has been reduced from 5 to 3, so it only stacks up to 3 times now. So whilst they've massively buffed it in terms of the damage that it does, you can't use it as often and it takes longer to charge up. The developers say the hive cannon is just a fun weapon. We wanted to make it more fun. We reduced the total number of hive shot charges and gave them to the primary shot for less reloading, and we also increased the reload, which dramatically buffs the damage of, while also dramatically buffing the damage of the hive shot damage over time effects. As a trade-off, we increased the mod build-up requirements. So yeah, that's going to be a pretty fun one, I think. Particle accelerator also got some changes. The reticle size has been adjusted to reflect the actual accuracy of the weapon. Particle accelerator is one that I haven't really used a huge amount of, but so I didn't really notice the accuracy. But yeah, it's a cool gun, and I'm glad they've made a little bit of a change to that. They also made a change to its gravity core in a previous patch. Okay, Defiler. Oh, is that the one that I don't have? Or is, oh no, Defiler is the funky shotgun pistol. So its initial spread has been reduced. So you get this lovely star pattern, and it's a little bit tighter than it was before. And the radioactive volley, which is its weapon mod, the fire rate of it has been increased. The Defiler didn't really need much, according to the devs. They adjusted the initial spread by a small margin so players could better enjoy its secretly good range. Because they class it as a shotgun. And yeah, it's got a good starburst pattern. They also removed a tiny bit of lag on firing radioactive volley back to back. So if you were using the weapon mod and you got multiple charges stacked up, you can fire them off quicker, which is nice, because I really liked that when I picked it up. There's a lot of really cool weapons in this game. Curse of the Jungle God, i.e. the tentacle gun, now fires faster. Increased fire rate from 3.0 to 3.5. But they have reduced its damage. So it's now down to 28 from 32. So its damage has been reduced by 4. And they've decreased its reload speed. Oh, okay. I was wondering why I couldn't reload then. It's because I'm out of ammo. Let's get that back. So faster firing, which is good. And much faster, well, 5% faster reloading, which is all good. Now, I've already talked about the Devastator. They've changed its reticule, the graphic, and so on and so forth, so it doesn't use the projectile reticule, which is all good. And the repulsor, which is the shotgun that you get from the end boss. They've made quite a few changes to this one. So they've reduced the initial spread by 40%, so it means it's much tighter. The spread decay post-shot, it now snaps back to the center a lot faster, which is good. But most importantly, they've made some changes to banish its weapon mod. So they've reduced the banish time from 8 to 4. So originally they banished enemies into another dimension for 8 seconds. Now it's only 4 seconds, which seems like a nerf. But actually it means that they get back into the action faster so that you can take advantage of the second parts. Oh, and also they've reduced the friendly banish time, which halves that again. Just in case, because there's always going to be that one guy that banishes his mate because they're hilarious. And they've reduced the banish charges from 8 to 5. So you can't do it as many times as you could before. But to be frank, 8 was probably a little bit too much anyway. So yeah, reduce banish time so that they come back in faster and they can take the increased damage. Developer comment. For the final boss weapon, the repulsor felt a tad underwhelming. The goal was to be a well-rounded tool that can fit on any team. By reducing the initial spread and increasing the post-shot decay speed, they've made it more reliable as a primary option. Additionally, they increased the debuff to 4 seconds so that players can easily unload all 5 shells into a post-banished enemy. Banish time was reduced to reduce the weighting and halved against friendlies because every team has that guy on it. To adjust for the upped effectiveness as well as higher +20 scaling, they reduced the total banish charges from 8 to 5. So that's not actually in the bullet points, but it is down there in the comments that they've changed the scaling of it at +20, which of course is actually +10 because of how boss weapons work. Okay. Armor. Some interesting changes here. Let's start off with Sharpshooter on the Hunter's armor. Increases range damage on targets greater than 15 meters away. This used to be the weak spot damage. It's now just, if you're going for a range build and you're wearing 3 pieces of this, you get +25% range damage at distance. Which is great because there are, as they say in the developer comment, they've removed the weak spot requirement because not every enemy has a weak spot, and because it already has a pretty strict range requirement. They're going to monitor the change and adjust both range and damage value accordingly. If you remember from my playthrough, I was getting a little bit frustrated at times with certain enemies, especially in the later zones, because I couldn't hit weak spots consistently because I couldn't find them. They were all wearing armor or masks and stuff. So that helps alleviate that. The ex-cultist stuff. Blood Pact no longer requires critical hits for mod generation, it's just hits. But they have reduced the max for 3 pieces to 40% mod power rather than 50 as it was before. Like the Hunter armor, they removed the additional requirement to gain the ex-cultist armor bonus in conjunction with the reduced spirit value from the trait, which is now down to 30. The ex-cultist armor should be more appealing endgame as a mod generation option. I've seen people on the forums already comment that, oh yeah, why are the starter gears competing with some of the endgame gears? It's like, there is no endgame gear in this game. There's no starter gear, there's no endgame gear, there's just gear. You mix and match however you want for whatever setup you want. If you want to do what I did and level the hunter stuff all the way through, you can do so. The idea isn't that gear that you get later in the game supersedes gear that you get at the start. It just gives you more options. So yeah, the cultist stuff has been, and actually the other starter piece, the scrapper, has also been changed. The 3-piece bonus has been increased to 25%. It used to be 15%, so now it's 25%. Increases damage dealt to all enemies within 5 meters, not 2.5 meters. So you now get a lot of extra damage, and it's not just melee; it's all damage for enemies within 5 meters. So if you want to do a kind of melee shotgun hybrid up close build, you've now got slightly more range to be dealing with for that, which I think is a really good change. It's been, I mean, 5 meters isn't very far, so it makes it easier to take advantage of as a close range set. Okay, this one people aren't massively happy about. Opportunist. Changed perfect dodge to grant 100% melee critical chance, because it used to be that it grants 100% crit chance, I think, and now it's only melee crit chance for 5 seconds. So if you perfect dodge, not only do you get the crit chance, but you now also get increased melee attack speed. So that's changed a bit. They've removed the melee damage buff on perfect dodge. It used to give you a melee a damage buff as well as attack speed. Now it's just much more attack speed and 100% melee crit chance for 5 seconds. So you're still going to get a damage boost, but it's through crits rather than just a flat damage buff. Developers have commented, "We fixed a bug that was granting players all crit chance when perfect dodging, rather than just melee crit chance. They also removed the raw melee damage buff and replaced it with melee speed to better facilitate an in-close melee style. Most noticeably, any perfect dodge, even with only one piece, will grant 100% crit chance, which is still a 50% minimum damage increase. So even if you're only wearing one piece of the set, and maybe you're putting in 2 pieces of scrapper, because it's 2 pieces of the scrapper set is still the same as the original 3 pieces, so you could combine the pair of those for extra melee damage. What else has changed? The Elder sets. I really like the look of the Elder set, but the 30% chance to not use a Dragonheart was a bit of a meh set bonus. So they've changed Believer, which now allows Dragonhearts to heal allies within 15 meters. Or either 25%, 50%, or 100% if you're wearing all 3 pieces of the set. So they've taken the bonus from one of the necklaces and they've put it onto this armor set. So if you were playing a supporty type character, this is great. In co-op, it's not particularly useful, or it's not useful at all in solo. Developers have commented they've changed how this set works. The original benefit, chance to not use a Dragonheart, was not as appealing as we'd hoped, especially for a full armor set. They swapped the effect with the Mender's Charm so that Dragonhearts now heal teammates. This makes the Elder armor an excellent support option. And yeah, that is definitely better. If you want to play the supporty character in your team, you can mod up with Mender's Aura and stuff like that, and you can really go to town with that. The final thing that has changed, Twisted Armor now offers slightly more health per second. It's not a huge amount, I don't think. I think they've just shifted the numbers up. Yeah, because it used to be 0.35 for 3 pieces. So they've just shunted the numbers upwards slightly. Obviously, that gets modified by triage and as per normal. So those are all of the changes to the weapons and armor. But wait, there's more. Trait balance. Catalyst was changed recently from 20% down to 15% when you've got it maxed out. They've now reverted it back to 20%. Since they've removed the interaction between catalyst and a ring that was causing problems, it's been reverted to its pre-nerf state. The devouring loop ring, which was this one, critical hits have a 5% chance to deal 300% damage. That was counting as a proc for catalyst. It wasn't supposed to. So they fixed that. It's now back to a flat 5% chance, and yeah, you know, rather than a 20% chance to proc, or 25, I suppose it would have been. Maths, not good. So yeah, that's been fixed. There's a lot of people moaning about how it's broken melee builds and about how Catalyst is no good anymore and about how Devouring Loop is no good anymore. I think they might up the percentage chance of the Devouring Loop to maybe 7 or 8, something like that at some point in the future. But for now, it's not the world's best option. Right, Rapid Strikes. This was the melee attack speed. That's been nerfed from 20 to 15%, so it allows the Akari armor. Again, if you're going for a melee build, the Akari set is probably one of the best ones to use, especially if you're good at perfect dodging. So that's been brought more in line to balance out overall. Otherwise, you're going to have absurd attack speed. And yeah, Spirit. Spirit actually was maxed out at 50% before. It's now down to 30%, so it allows the ex-cultist armor an opportunity to shine. So if you are going for a build that wants, where you want to max out mod power generation, you can't just pump a load of stuff into Spirit and have 50% mod generation. So it kind of makes you specialize a little bit more. Some people aren't happy with this. I personally think it's a good change. It means that you've got more visual variety. It means some of the armor sets that weren't being used very much before now get more usage. If you want to use mods a lot, you're gonna have to now use some pieces of the cultist set. I think that makes good build viability, that rather than just relying on traits and then powering up elsewhere as well. Trinkets. Oh, this is causing some controversy. So we've already talked about the Devouring Loop. It was never meant to work with a Catalyst trait, as it is not a status effect. But we thought it would be a cool, fun idea. Spoiler alert, we all make mistakes. So they've changed that. Yeah, the proc chance for Catalyst is supposed to be for status effects like corrosion and rot and bleeding and overload and burning. The crit chance on Devouring Loop is not a status effect, but it was being affected by it, and it shouldn't have been. So they've changed it. Cleansing Jewel. So Dragon Hearts remove all status effects, and status effect buildup is reduced by 15%. So it no longer does its 15 meter AoE Dragon Heart healing thing. It just cleanses. It actually is slightly more what it says on the tin, if that makes sense. But they have added this reduces status effect build-up. So if you are in a zone and you've got a particular set of armor that you really like, but it's terrible versus something that you could really do with some resistance to in a particular zone, you could pop this on and have 50% extra build-up resistance to that. Mender's Charm. So this is where the proc chance for not consuming a Dragon Heart has gone. 25% chance, increases self-healing effectiveness with all healing items. So they've switched those two over. And it's gained the 25% increased self-healing, which was originally on Cleansing Jewel. So Cleansing Jewel is now very much about cleansing. And the Mender's Charm is now very much about mending. I know, right? Soul Anchor. Increases duration of summoned creatures by 40%. That's not changed. And the max minion count by 1. And that's to do with how they have changed the various summon mods in the game, which we're going to get to in a moment. The only other thing that they've changed in terms of items is adrenaline. They've nerfed the attack speed down to 10%. I think they're worried about people attacking too fast in melee, and I can kind of understand that. Still the same duration, still the same movement, but it means that the Akari set bonus can have a bit more use and probably not break the game when it comes to animations. Mods, a point of contention for a lot of people apparently. Let's take a look at the mods. Right. Oh, there've been some changes, folks. So, mods now properly scale with weapon level. Certain mods also scale based on other factors, for example, player health, triage, traits, and so on and so forth. The amount of summons of things have been limited. So, for example, here, you can have a maximum of 3 skulls out at a time, whereas before you could summon as many as you could get mod power for. So added the max allowed simultaneous summon value to their description so that you know what you are getting yourselves into. Developers comment, we've converted all mods to properly scale weapon level. Typically they start lower than their original base but scale higher. Thus you get a bigger benefit out of slotting them in higher leveled weapons. We've also made a change to how summons work, so that there is a cap on simultaneous instances. If the max is reached and a new summon is activated, it will destroy the oldest. The max simultaneous can be increased with Soul Anchor. So as we saw, Soul Anchor will give you the max minion count increased by 1. Right, what have they changed? Iron Sentinel. So that's your turrets. They'll now properly target and shoot certain enemies that they weren't shooting before. The ghasts and root frogs. Unfortunately, because there's no way in game of telling what monsters are called, you've kind of just got to guess at which these are. Root frogs, I'm assuming, are the doggies in the swamp area. I've no idea what ghasts are. But it's a bug fix. More than anything, that one. They weren't targeting them before. Right, Rattleweed. Rattleweed. Shoots a projectile that spawns a Rattleweed upon impact with 300 health and draws on aggros on all enemies within 12.5 meters. Lasts 10 seconds. Max 1. Max 1. Already people are annoyed about this. So, power requirement increased from 750 to 1,000. So they've made it harder to get out to start with. Slightly slower. Not a huge amount if you've got a fast weapon, but slightly slower to bring out. They've reduced the initial aggro generation from the pulse, and enemies can now be pulled off the Rattleweed if they take enough damage. So there's no just throwing it out and everybody just sticking to it like glue. Now, you can now, if you've got a boss and 4 enemies and they're all attacking the Rattleweed and you just want to attack the boss, you can grab aggro on the boss. The other enemies will keep on attacking the Rattleweed. So it makes more sense that the boss isn't just wailing on the Rattleweed, where the thing that's actually damaging it, i.e. you and your team, is wailing on it from behind. It makes a lot more sense. So enemies can be pulled off Rattleweed, but it does now pulse constant aggro generation. So if enemies spawn after it's cast, it now keeps on pulsing an aggro radius, like a totem would in World of Warcraft, as opposed to it draws aggro when it initially comes out and that's it. Casting the second Rattleweed while the first is out will remove the first, unless you've got Soul Anchor equipped, in which case you can bring out 2. When it's killed or it expires, it drops aggro immediately. Originally, it was still active for 5 seconds. Rattleweed has always been too good in a game that has a lot of enemies that you are expected to deal with. We didn't want to change the core concept of the mod, but we did want to reduce how overpowered it was. They increased the build-up so it takes just a bit longer to fill. They reduced the initial aggro pulse by a significant amount so it didn't lock enemies on it until death. We added a constant pulse that will pull new spawned enemies towards it, assuming you do not already have too much aggro. Additionally, when a second Rattleweed is summoned, the first one's immediately killed. Previously, it would stick around for 5 seconds and hold aggro, which made it even more effective than it should have been. Players can still summon 2 if they use Soul Anchor. Veil of the Black Tear. Ah, that's the energy. Anyway, I was reading the patch notes, I can't remember what this one actually does. That's the impenetrable energy field, the big bubble that you can stand inside. What have they done to this? It's unbreakable. No longer breakable while active. It is literally an impenetrable energy field for 7 seconds. Previously, it could break, I guess. That's cool. Right, Swarm. One of my favourite mods. They've changed this one a bit. They've increased its duration by 5 seconds, so it now lasts 25 seconds rather than 20, which is good. But they have reduced its charges to 1, so you can only build at 1 at a time. To be honest, I've always found it a little bit slow to charge anyway, so I rarely had more than 1 available. But yeah, reduced charges to 1. They wanted to make Swarm a sort of buddy that followed you around and attacked anything dangerous. However, there is a bug, no pun intended, in this patch that keeps the duration to 12 seconds. So whilst it says 25 seconds, it's only actually going to last for 12. They're in the process of fixing it. So we're going to have this 25 seconds in the future. They've actually put the note in the patch notes because they know players will see that it says 25 seconds and is still only lasting half. So that they know people will moan. Finally, Breath of the Desert. They've reduced the reduction in charges. So it used to be 3 charges and they pulled it down to 2 because it was combining with other things and was too powerful. They pumped it back up. They know that it still does quite a lot of damage and therefore they might have to adjust that in the future. For now, rest assured that we will never again change the total charges of Breath of the Desert unless we do. So that's good. Right, finally, and I can't show you this on the screen because this involves enemies. The Shade Shatter boss fight, they've improved the behaviour across the board. The beam rifle will probably stagger certain phases in the Undying King, and the Undying King will no longer change targets mid-attack. That wasn't an issue for me because I played the game solo, but I think if you were co-oping, that was probably a big deal. Canker, Wave can no longer be killed via explosions. Exilis, they fix issues with exploiting parts of the fight through the wall, and the hit reaction on its scream will no longer push you off the bridge, thank God, because I fell afoul of that once. The Unclean One, caskets no longer spawn enemies after the fight. The Unclean One's the spinny hammer guy. And yeah, he spawns ads during the fight, but occasionally they bug out and spawn ads after the fight as well. He won't do that anymore. The Kin Caller no longer slows down the game when killed during its summon. So this is all general behaviour, bug feedback. Goal is to clean up the rough edges, make the fights less exploitable and more consistent. I don't actually know which the Kin Caller was. Anyway, final boss changes. Nightmare. Breakout requirement reduced by 30%. Was 10% of 1 million base, now 3.5% of 2 million base because they've doubled its HP. So in order to get it into the phase where you can actually deal massive damage to the Dreamer inside, it now needs to take a lower percentage of the maximum health in order to get there. The breakout timer phase variance, which was originally 15 to 30 seconds, has been removed. It's now 30% flat. And the vulnerable phase has been increased by an extra couple of seconds, so you've got now 7 seconds rather than 5 to deal massive damage during that breakout phase when the Dreamer is vulnerable. He no longer faces away when broken out. That was a bug that I was getting quite a lot of the last couple of times I tried the fights. Because I kind of didn't bother. Because he kept turning away. You know, he became vulnerable and he turned away. There's no way of getting to him because you can't shoot through his back. So that's been fixed. Nightmare no longer changes target after starting attack. Health doubled. We're serious. Should no longer be fightable immediately after being defeated. Developer comments, some players found the Nightmare breakout phase to be tedious, so reduce the breakout threshold and increase the total health. So he's easier to get into his vulnerable status, and you may not even need as many stacks from inside the upside down, as I keep on calling it, but they have doubled his health. This is so that players can more consistently get to the fun part of the fight, which is seeing those ridiculously huge numbers shooting over its head. They also reduce the variance of the breakout phase for consistency and increase the total amount of DPS time when broken. Also, some bug fixes. Final note, as always, use the control rod to play fetch with Wasteland Good Boy. The Wasteland Good Boy has been extremely good boy since launch day, and we felt it only right that he gets some quality playtime. We've been working on setting up a playdate with Earth Good Boy, but have yet to find him. Please restart your game client to apply the update. Players will need to be on the same version to group up in multiplayer. So an absolute massive chunk of balance changes and so on and so forth. All in all, excellent changes. Some of them have really annoyed players, like the rebalancing of traits and the quote-unquote starter armor sets. And the changes to the devouring loop especially seem to have rankled some people that were using a rather OP, crit-heavy melee bleed build. And there's a few people kind of annoyed about the beam rifle as well. But all in all, I think those are positive changes for the longevity and balance of the game. I did see one person say, why'd you keep doing balance changes on a single-player game? It's like, it's not single-player though, is it? It's co-op. So having a balanced team, or at least a reasonably balanced team, I think what they meant was it's not PvP, so why should we care? Having a game where there's clearly one ideal optimized build is dumb. You know, part of the draw of the Souls genre is that there are multiple ways of playing the game. Diversity increases longevity. So having multiple options for how to play, multiple armor sets, multiple traits, multiple mods that are all viable is really, really useful. Anyway, this video has gone on for a ridiculous amount of time. I didn't realise I'd been talking for this long. I'm going to end it here. So those are the patch notes for the 28th of August. I'm a little bit slow actually on getting this out, but it's a massive update, so I wanted to take the time to digest them. Hope this has been informative for people, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Cheers for watching. Cheerio. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, why not click the like button and consider subscribing. Remember, you can ring the bell notification icon to get notified when new videos go live. And until next time, cheerio.